You're tuned to Channel 8, Littleton's community television station. Programming produced about your town, your friends, and your neighbors. Issues that matter to you, and community events that will only be seen right here on Channel 8. Thanks for tuning in, and enjoy tonight's programs.
Hi, I'm Bob Spinozzi. There isn't another picture that comes to mind that is more Americana than the image of people gathered around a potbelly stove in a general store and talking. In the 1800s and through the first part of the 20th century, the potbelly was the face of social activity in addition to having its heating value. You could find these stoves in schools, businesses, most public places, and train depots, where travelers found warmth and comfort. On today's show, we're going to visit Erickson's Antique Stove on Taylor Street and meet owner David Erickson. He'll give us a history lesson on the likes of Franklin, Parlor, Cylinder, Box, Oak, and Potbelly, when those stoves were all household names. You're also going to see firsthand how these antique stoves are recrafted, redetailed, and returned to their prominence because they were works of art. Now, the store happens to be housed in Littleton's original train station, and during the show we're also going to get into the history of the depot. But for now, we'll put that on the back burner. So let's turn the clock back, stir up that wood or shake down those coals, and head over to the old depot and Erickson Stove.
Big trains, the way they travel down the track with the smoke coming out the stack. There is nothing quite the same as they travel past my window pane. I love big trains.
Hey David, thank you very much for being on Small Town.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited.
You know, you started out, you were teaching at the Perkins School for the Blind in Watertown for several years. And you had hobbies, like we all have hobbies. And one of yours was wood-burning stoves. And in 1976, you bought the Littleton, what had been the Littleton Depot. And now look where we are now.
Well, I was very fortunate to have found this building in 1976. I was out riding bicycles with a friend one Sunday afternoon and didn't know this area. And there was a stopped at the water fountain across the street, and wasn't there a sign on the building that said, "For sale by owner?" And I met the gentleman the following Tuesday, and I think we put a handshake deal together within a week. I was teaching industrial arts at the Perkins School for the Blind, teaching woodworking, and I had a sideline of cutting firewood, and I moved to Littleton with about 20 cords of wood and bought this electrically heated building that I wasn't sure how I was going to heat it. And with the building came a large potbelly stove, an old U.S. Army cannon heater, and so I began heating with that, and I purchased my first stove in Maine, brought it to Perkins, restored it in my metal shop, and it was seen by the music teacher of the school at the time. She fell in love with it, became my first customer, and it's really been
all just flourished from here.
It's been all downhill from there.
Oh, downhill. Well, I don't think you quite mean that. But now, when you did buy the depot, I believe you were telling me you were the fourth private person to possess the depot.
I was.
We are on the old B&M line, and I think the MBTA bought the depot at some point, and then they were selling it off.
Right. Well, the railroad sold this building in 1956, and I'm the fourth private owner, as you said. It was purchased by Ted McElroy in 1956, who was an electronics genius at the time. He purchased it for $1. And then there was an antique business in here after that, and then there was Bob Wallace, who I purchased it from, who lived here and had a non-book educational products business. And then I lived here, and started my stove business.
And now there's a huge antique business here.
And it's been very good to me.
In fact, you're really a member of a very small fraternity of antique stove dealers, and your customer base is rather broad.
Well, there are about 6 real serious antique stove restorers in New England. I have been the past president of the Antique Stove Association, of which we have almost 200 members, have a convention every year, and we have a wonderful little connection with swapping parts and stoves, and we all help each other out. It's not a competitive fraternity by any means. We're all quite into helping each other.
You're talking about 6 local dealers, but in fact the interest is captured both across the country and internationally.
Yes, very much so.
And you probably sold to people
I
from
have
all parts.
I have a wonderful customer base. I could start with some of the more prominent names. Ralph Lauren has purchased 2 stoves from us over the years. One in a horse farm in New York, upstate New York, another in his ranch out in Telluride, Colorado. We recently sold a fabulous kitchen range to Michael Strahan from the New York Giants, football player for the New York Giants. We have a coal-burning cook stove on the Shenandoah, which is owned by Bob Douglas, owner of the Black Dog Cafe in Martha's Vineyard. And this coal-burning stove runs all summer long while Bob takes people out on charters on his tall ship boat. It heats the boat, does all the cooking for them. It's a real authentic ride for him, so he loves the stove. The Voltaggio family of the Arizona Iced Tea Company have bought 4 stoves from us in their restoration project of an old stone lighthouse on the north shore of Long Island.
Can you tell me something about a certain actress that...
Whoopi Goldberg is a wonderful customer and certainly so much fun. She purchased a beautiful round oak parlor stove from us some years back. I met her at a antique show that I was doing in New York City. She literally walked into the booth, took one look at the stove and walked up to it and just put a hug around it and said, "This one's mine." And it was really a great thing for her. She's really been happy with it. The National Park Service is a great customer of mine. I have 4 stoves in the Lowell National Park in the boarding house, one in one of the gate houses, the canal gate houses. The National Park Service in Denver, Colorado has a beautiful wood-burning kitchen range that we did, that was almost 25 years ago. The late Brad Krause, a really wonderful customer who died rather suddenly this year, was the founder of Kinko's, the coffee company. Of course. Retired, and we did a beautiful stove, a lot like the one we did for Michael Strahan. But all aside, and wonderful famous names, one more comes to mind. The English ambassador to the United States has one of our stoves on his little cottage in the Isle of Wight in England. So we not only have them here in the United States, we have them abroad. The people that we really do business with every day are the wonderful customers who share the same love and passion for these stoves that we have, and heat their homes with them every day, and have just supported me for almost 30 years. So,
well, I want to start talking about those stoves. At the top of the show, I mentioned to the viewers several types of stoves: the Franklin, the oak, the box, a couple of others. Now, of course, if you were in a public place back then, you were with a potbelly stove, right? And if you were home, you were in your parlor quite often with the parlor stove.
That's correct. And probably one of the most common parlor stoves is the oak-style parlor stove, of which this round oak is a beautiful example of. This is actually very similar to the stove that Whoopi Goldberg bought from us, built around 1890. They were designed to burn either wood or coal. Beautiful nickel plating. Wonderful. This has the original finial that has the round oak company emblem on it, and of course it's been all completely restored inside and outside with all new firebox liners and new grates. There's another example next to it, this Garland oak, which is another beautiful parlor stove.
While we're on the subject of Whoopi Goldberg, didn't you buy something from her as well?
And I also purchased a beautiful Magic Chef gas stove, somewhat similar to that Magic Chef stove that's there against the wall. She had that in her home in Tuxedo Park, New York. Yes. The next category that you mentioned, which really bring back a lot of memories for people, are these pot bellies.
The pot belly.
Yes. The station agent is probably one of the most beautiful and recognizable stoves used in railroad depots, ferry houses, saloons, all types of public buildings. The bumper ring around the middle was
to protect people from bumping into it?
Protect people from getting burned, although it in later years became known as the boot rail because the classic, the
keep your feet warm, huh?
Exactly, and the classic vision of the old men in the firehouse Windsors with the checkerboard and their feet up on the stove. So it really became known as the boot ring or bump, but it was a bumper rail. The stove next to it is a rendition of that. It's a caboose heater. It was actually made to heat a Boston and Maine railroad caboose. It's dated, I think, 1887. We've just restored that for a gentleman and converted it to gas. He no longer wants to burn solid fuel, so it now has a gas heater in it.
I think you mentioned to me, obviously there were many, many sizes of the potbelly, but you did mention one particular model where it was really elevated.
That's correct.
To create more of a heating area.
That would be this Red Cloud right here, which was made by the same company that made the station agent. That was the Union Stove Works. They were down in Peekskill, New York. They were a wonderfully prolific company. They made beautiful things. This Red Cloud could have also been used in railroad stations and other public buildings. But when the building called for an extra, had an extra high ceiling and called for extra heating capacity, the stove could be equipped with what they called an extra half can, which was this steel cylinder, which raised the top of the stove up about 14 or 15 inches, creating more surface area and more heating capacity. These are quite rare to see them with the extra half can on top.
And then, of course, the potbellies were also in train cars. They were in the caboose and maybe the mail car.
Train cars, Pullman cars. We even sold a stove some years back to a trolley museum out in Minnesota, and it was a special stove that was made to go between the seats of a trolley car. It had a beautiful, fancy, reticulated case on the outside so that people could sit next to it and not get burned. And it was the only one I've ever seen in 30 years.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
so there's a lot of stoves made for, special purposes. We could, take a look at this. Yeah. Sears Roebuck from 1904. This was a farmer's cauldron heater or an agricultural boiler. It was used as a wood-burning stove on the bottom, and it had the cast iron cauldron on top for heating hot water. The water would be used for slaughtering of chickens and turkeys to remove the feathers. This is a 22-gallon size. It was made all the way up to 75 gallons, which of course could have been used for slaughtering hogs and larger farm animals. I've taken out an article reprint from the Sears catalog from 1904, showing the stove in all of the different sizes from 15 gallons all the way to 75. Again, this one only 22.
So this particular one
is the second one.
Is the second. The $9.72 special back then.
$9.72 back in 1904. But the wonderful part of it, even though it was just a utilitarian workhorse stove, it was beautifully embellished with the cow's heads and ears of corn and wonderful feet, that animal toed feet, and they just took such pride in everything that they built. That that's why it's so popular today.
They were all a work of art.
And the people that buy them from me today, I happen to have one like this, just a little smaller, in a wood-fired sauna building in the back of my home, and it's full of nice smooth river rocks, and we fire it up. It heats the sauna, and we put a little water on the rocks to create the humidity. I have another customer up in Maine who has purchased one, and he uses it for clam and lobster boils. He sets it up in his backyard with 3 or 4 sections of stovepipe to create a portable chimney, and he boils all his clams and lobsters for his
So here's a type of stove that I've never even heard of before, yet you've already given me two uses, and I'm sure there are even many more.
What makes this business so enjoyable is finding the adaptive reuse for these things. They actually see them, come back to life and go back to function and in people's lives.
What percentage, roughly, would you say you sell gas-fired as opposed to wood-fired?
Well, in the last 10 years, the wood-burning stove business, which is what we really got our start in, has backed down somewhat. And the vintage kitchen look, people who want to build a kitchen in the look of 1920s, versus the modern kitchen of today with all stainless steel appliances and
like Michael Strahan's, for instance?
Yes, where
when
he
you sold them.
Right, he had beautiful vintage subway tile walls and old pot racks, and he bought an old wooden icebox refrigerator from us to augment and complement the stove. But that vintage kitchen look has been very, very popular in the last 10 years, so that we sell a tremendous number of these gas cooking ranges. This one is a really high-end model with 8 burners and 4 ovens. It actually came from, and not only do we sell them to prominent people, this came from the Mellons, the Mellon Bank family. It was in one of their homes down in Pennsylvania. In its day, purchasing that stove was kind of like purchasing a Duesenberg. That was just about as elegant.
Top of the line as you can get.
That was about as elegant as a stove cut. The one behind me, I can move a few of my little things here. This is another really beautiful stove dated 1912, and it's got 6 burners. It's got two ovens and a broiler. Here comes our local train. And it's got glass doors, which is very unusual, and a roll-up warming oven. But what makes it really so special is that it's the only stove I've ever seen that has an integral hood. The hood is actually built into the stove. Usually the hoods are separate.
They're separate, correct.
We made that hood for Michael Strahan to match his stove. But this hood is original to the stove. I've never seen anything like it in 30 years. It's a really wonderful machine. 6 burners, gas. We've converted both of the ovens to electric. My sheet metal fabrication wizard, Keith, fabricates all brand new stainless interiors for us, all new modern insulation, electric elements. This stove is awesome. This stove will last its next owner, generations. They don't wear out.
What significance is this
That's
number have?
just a model number.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all, not a date. The dates are actually right here on the hinge. It's 1912.
Okay.
Just to give people a reference, I say that's 2 years before the Titanic sunk. This stove's been around a long time.
Unbelievable.
Outlived the Titanic.
Now, we have a stove right here that someone from Littleton hopefully is going to own on September 29th. You want to tell us about that?
Well, this stove is it's got a nice little story to it. It's an 1840s style stove, but it was built in 1890. And I have a catalog picture of it. And in 1890, it was being sold as a reproduction. Now, today we think antiques and
Correct.
we think This stove was a reproduction in 1890 because it was being remanufactured from patterns from an 1840s Franklin. So we are going to donate this stove to the Littleton Community Boosters Auction, which is going to be September 29th, I believe.
Yep.
And it's a beautiful early wood-burning Franklin. It has many, many uses. It could be, it would make a wonderful complement to someone with a 3-season porch who would just like to have add a little warmth to a 3-season room, or to a, family room or a living room. I've sold a number of stoves like this to people who are building new or putting on an addition, especially putting on a master bedroom, would like to have a fireplace on the second floor in the master bedroom until the mason tells them how much money it costs to build a fireplace on the second floor. Well, this is actually a freestanding cast iron fireplace that would only require a simple chimney and a simple stovepipe connection, and you would have a beautiful little open front
So it would
fireplace.
be a neat thing to have outside too, though, as you mentioned.
And I have, I've sold one recently to a gentleman who had a beautiful lakeside home with a big deck that overlooked his pond, and he put it right out on his deck so they could have a little fireplace, outdoor fireplace. So I'm hoping.
But do I understand now that you're donating?
I'm donating this stove to the auction, and to bring, whatever it will bring. If it were here on the showroom floor with a price tag, it would probably be around $1,000 or $1,100. It's in absolutely perfect condition. I picked it up from a antique dealer up near Killington, Vermont last February.
Okay. And again, that auction that we're talking about is September 29th in the Littleton Middle School cafeteria. And the time is from 5 to 11 p.m. And all donations will go towards the Littleton schools and the seniors in town. Great thing that you're doing.
Thank you. I hope it finds a really wonderful home, right here in Littleton or surrounding town.
Now, I'd like to go down in another part of the depot where you have your shop, really, where you do the work. And Keith is back there. I'd like to meet Keith, talk to Keith, and he can tell us about some of these wonderful, detailed things that he does to these stoves here.
Well, he's been a most fabulous employee, and he's as enthusiastic about his work as I am about our work. So, yeah, let's go meet Keith.
Let's go.
All right.
Well, the corn is all gathered up and stored in the crate. Soon the snow will come and cover up the fields. The wood pile in the backyard will last till next spring. In Daddy's old wood stove there will always be a flame. Now winter's coming on and the weather's getting cold. I always think of Daddy and his old wood burning stove.
And here we are in the shop that I mentioned. Keith Arsenault, glad to meet you.
Nice to meet
You've been here for quite a few years.
you. Yeah, 18 now.
18 years.
Yep.
And there must be something about it that you like.
Oh yeah, it's different, that's for sure.
This is an example of one of your creations.
Yep.
You want to tell us a little something about it?
Sure, this is a Fortress Crawford that we converted to gas. Right here, originally it was a water coal stove,
Okay.
but now it's fully functional as a gas conversion.
So someone's going to come in here and buy this stove,
Yep.
and they're going to cook things on it because it's
Yeah,
functional. What are
yes.
some of the things that
More,
people
more,
might
for,
cook?
more for heating, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, the temperature probably will get around 325 degrees, but that's about it. Yeah.
But if someone is buying a cooking stove, what are some of the things they might be apt to cook on them?
Oh, I hear that like the pizza is the greatest, or the baked beans, or even bread. I heard that's just unbelievable.
Kind of like being in Bertucci's.
Sure, there you go.
Keith, can you take us through the different steps that you take to completely restore a magnificent machine like this?
Sure. We actually take out the firebox. There's all the grates and liners we remove, put a brand new 30,000 BTU burner in it, and then we put a gas control on the back.
Okay. Now you've also when we were talking a little bit earlier before we started taping this, you do adapt some stoves. You had it's like that large stove down there. You mentioned, I think, that you lowered the firebox.
Oh, yes, yeah, we dropped
How do you
the grate.
about doing that?
Yeah, originally, the grate is only like 6 inches deep. We drop it down to 10 inches on some stoves, yeah? Which really makes it a lot more efficient. You can get more wood in it. That's the name of the game.
So give us an example of one of the wood stoves that you've taken, wood
Okay.
stoves this time, and taken it from coming in here being all rusty and not usable to something that's very magnificent.
Sure. Well, the Stewart over there, we completely dismantle it. We wash all the enamel, and then we take all the parts to a wheel abrader, and we sandblast everything and repaint it all, and put it back together so it's totally functional.
Okay. Now I also you have quite a few usable parts on this property.
Yes.
And David was telling me that you have a real eye for finding parts.
Yes. Yeah, if there's anything missing or broken, we can just pick something up off the floor and weld it back together, and it's as good as new.
And if something needs to be either lengthened or shortened, you have the capability
Welding
to do
everything.
that as well.
Sure.
Now, you're a real artist here, and you're also an artist on another stage. Do you want to
Yes.
tell us about that?
Sure. I'm a singer in a cover band, a local cover band.
The name of the band?
Over 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you've performed fairly locally to Littleton. You were telling me you were in Lowell.
Lowell, yeah, Boston, Lawrence, we play all around.
Anything coming up?
Yes, actually next week we're playing Deb's Lakeview Lounge in Drake.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's another one in New Hampshire, up at Hampton Beach.
Okay. So
Yeah.
somehow you've got two careers going, and
Yes.
this one, again, the finish work that you do is absolutely magnificent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. David, let's talk about the old depot now. The depot where you are now was constructed in 1879.
Correct.
It's the second one there. Apparently there was an absolutely horrific fire that destroyed the first one. But this is the second one, and as we talked about earlier in the show, you came here in 1976. And from that point, though, you've done a lot of restoration work.
Well, we have. When I first bought the building, it had been completely covered in wood shingles over the original clapboards. The original standing seam metal roof on the overhang around the building had been covered over with wood shingles as well, because the steel roofing underneath had all rotted away. The real significant features of the building, being Italianate styling, were the Palladian, the beautiful double Palladian windows in the front and back of the building. They were missing, but we had old photographs of the building, and with the help of Robert Adam, former resident of Littleton and now member of the Shirley Historical Society and also teacher of restoration carpentry at the North Bennett Street School in Boston, used his students to help me reconstruct those windows exactly as they were. We've also replaced all the original windows on the far end of the building, the north end of the building, which is where the Railway Express office once was in the building.
You mentioned you replaced the roof, the shingles?
We replaced the slate roof, we replaced the standing seam roof with a copper roof, and we've replaced all the windows. We rebuilt the chimneys right from
I was saying, I'm
center.
looking up at the chimney
They're
now. It's rebuilt.
beautiful, beautiful chimneys. They were rebuilt from the ground up because they were all in sad need of repair. We've done quite a bit. It's not finished, and I'm not sure it will. It's quite a daunting task, and I work at it as time and funds allow.
Well, we have the old depot, but behind us we have something else.
Well,
And there's a story that comes with
that was a wonderful pet project. It's a copy of the original gate tender shanty, which actually was located on the other side of the track because at one time there was a double track here instead of single. And in the days before automatic gates, a gate tender actually sat in that building, manned 24 hours a day, so that when a train came through, he got out and put down the gates. Well, that building always became a little source of community hangout and, you know, conversation and just wonderful little places to be. And an elderly gentleman from this neighborhood, his name was John Peterson, in his youth spent a lot of time in that, you know, hanging around in that building with the gatekeeper. And one day, after the building had long been torn down, he came to me and told me a story that when they tore the building down, the railroad people gave him the front door and the cast iron chimney that is on top of the building. They're very charismatic looking chimney for the stove that was in it. And John had the chimney and the door in his backyard. He brought them down to me, showed them to me. I was so excited that I decided to kind of clone the building to go underneath the chimney. So we built that building as a model of the old gate tender shanty. It's been maybe stylized just slightly more than the original one was, a little fancier, but many of them could have been that fancy. And that also was built for me by the students of the North Bennett Street School in Boston.
And it has the original door and the original chimney.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Now you have another building coming up on the property.
Well, my next plan, as you know, and most people who travel by, you know, storage is a problem in my business. You know, we have to keep on hand so many stoves and spare parts in order to keep this business going, and it's hard to leave everything outdoors. And I would like to build a new warehouse building in the empty lot that I own next door. However, I'm not the kind of guy who would just put up a simple metal, inexpensive metal warehouse building because it just doesn't suit my style. Well, I came across a photograph of an old harness shop that was on that lot that burned to the ground in approximately 1896. I'm not exactly sure of the date, but I know it's in that era. It was a beautiful story-and-a-half building, about 30 feet wide, 40 feet long, and I am going to build that building exactly as it was. It's got beautiful overhangs and nice detailing. It's going to just be an empty building.
What's your time frame on this?
I have gone through the variance process. I've gone through the planning board. I have the permits. I have not pulled a building permit as of yet because I'd like to get a little more funding in line. I would like to see the building go up in the next 2 or 3 years. With 2 children in college right now, I have other priorities, but I would really love to have that building up in the next 2 or 3 years. And it will be an exact copy of the original harness shop. We'll use it for storage of our stoves and our parts.
You just keep growing and growing and growing.
Well, space is, space is always a problem in a business like ours because we have to keep so much on hand to keep going.
Okay. Look, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm certainly a lot more informed now than I was an hour ago. Had a great time, David. And thank you very much for being with us on Small Town. And you know what? I've got to catch a train to Porter Square, so I got to get going.
Yes, I always think of Daddy and his old wood-burning stove.
Wasn't that a lot of fun? Does it want to make you go out and buy a wood-burning stove? You know, there are 2 wood-burning stoves over at Kimball's Ice Cream. There's a very large potbelly in the country store, and then there's a small oak stove in the miniature golf area. So I'm sure you'll be down to Kimball's again before the season's over, so when you do go down there, take note of it. I sure am. Well, hey, thank you again for watching, and I had a great time. I hope you did, and I'll see you next time on Small Town.